When it comes to creating sponsored content for social media, are you legally allowed to use voice modulators like the trickster voice on TikTok to create your content on behalf of a brand? Let's talk to every favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, to find out more.
My name is Tony Iliakostas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that's dedicated to all things intellectual property.
Tony, we love. Nope. I'm so sorry. Amber crawled under me. She started hacking, and I'm like, we love. What? No.
No, we don't love that.
I was trying to say content creators love.
Yeah.
Like that did not go well. I'm sorry. Let's try that again.
It's okay. My name is Tony Iliakostas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that's dedicated to all things intellectual property.
Tony, content creators love to use voice modulators inside of TikTok and Instagram and some of the other apps. But when it comes to professional influencers who are doing paid or paid in trade brand deals, are they allowed to use those voice modulators inside of the social apps to create their content? And if they are, is that something that they can take from one and move it over to another app?
So it's a really good question. And I think it's all going to boil down to what the terms and conditions are for use of that specific type of resource or technology in a given app. So let's actually take it outside the scope of apps that have those native voice modulators like, TikTok or Instagram. And actually, let's think about apps like CapCut, Video Leap, those types of platforms. They've become much better over the years. And now with obviously AI becoming a real deal and, it's here to stay, they've certainly hopped on the bandwagon of creating certain voice modification and modulators on those platforms. If you wanted to use those types of resources for personal purposes, of course, that's totally covered because that was the whole premise of the feature in that app. But it becomes a whole different ball game when you're using it, for an ad campaign, a sponsorship, or branded partnership with a specific brand, because now what was formerly personal is now become a little bit more professional. It's basically become some type of commercial use. I think what a lot of people may fail to understand is that anything with hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored or sponsorship, or even the little notice that's on Instagram and TikTok that would say that this is a paid sponsorship, all of that is no different than if you were sitting in front of your TV and watching a television commercial for, Dove soap or for Target or for Macy's. And it certainly is no different than all of the ads that you hear on some type of reel, if you're like, let's say, listening to Pandora Music or app or any sort of music apps that have an ad reel that plays. It's basically, the bottom line is you're using something like that in a commercial nature. And what would need to be verified is if the terms and conditions allow use of those specific software features in that platform. So, it never hurts to just take a look. I would think for the most part, it should be okay because it's carte blanche access for everyone to use it in a pretty wide manner. It might get a little bit more dicey if, let's say, certain voice modulators are based after certain actors or actresses or celebrities. A lot of them have very distinct voices, and your ability to use a voice modulator there is going to be very limited in nature. I think a great example of that is there's an app called Speechify that has done a partnership with Snoop Dogg, and Snoop Dogg can actually read books to you. The thing, though, is that he's reading books to you on a personal level, but you can't use, let's say, this, Snoop Dogg's voice to generate some type of voice text to then use in your sponsored ad or any other branded partnership that you're working on, because now it's given the impression that Snoop Dogg is endorsing or is involved in the specific branded partnership that you're doing as an influencer. So you want to be very, very wary of that. But it never hurts to go to the terms and conditions, just read it out, see if there's some information laid out there about commercial use of those specific voice modulators. This extends to apps like CapCut and Video Leap, and I think you should do the same equally with Instagram and TikTok and other social media platforms that have that. And obviously, if you have any questions or concerns about this, go speak to a lawyer. Lawyers are very aware and conscious about these types of little loopholes or even certain red herrings that are out there in these terms and conditions, and you want to be well equipped. So speaking to a lawyer, especially one that specializes in content creation and protecting influencer rights, that's going to be the main contact you want to reach out to if you ever have any questions about using voice modulators in your sponsored ads.
And let's say we do have the ability to use something on one of the social platforms for our sponsored content. Can we then take that voice modulator text and move it over to the other social platform, or do we have to do those in the independent apps?
For the most part, I think it should be okay. I've seen cross pollination is a really common thing in the social media space. We do it all the time, even if for the stuff that's not using the native voice modulator. We make our own videos on TikTok, and there are people that will carry that video over to Instagram, even with the TikTok watermark. The only thing there is that it could affect engagement. It could affect the insights for that video from one platform versus another. So the reach may not be as widespread. And I know that Instagram, for example, has been very proactive in making sure that content that comes from those other platforms doesn't necessarily have the reach as content that is natively made or uploaded on Instagram's app. So I think it's all going to boil down to really what your end goal is. Do you want high engagement? Do you want high, results from a stats point of view? And if you do, I think having one voice modulator for one app should be distinct from another. Again, if you're using apps like CapCut and Video Leap and all those others, I think it's a moot point. But maybe you're going to be in a different scenario where you use the voice modulator that's native to TikTok. You may find something that's a little bit different for other apps like Instagram and such.
So, if you are going to be creating sponsored content, you're going to be using some sort of voice modulator. Make sure you do your research and read those terms of service first, and you have a conversation with the group that you are partnering with to make sure they understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and they approve it as well before you move forward with this so that you do not have to redo your work if they decide that's not going to fit for them. If you have questions on this, drop those down below. Tony's coming back for upcoming episodes. And as always, you can reach out to Tony on social media. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the IP Professor. And you can check out my entertainment law podcast called NScene, with new episodes dropping every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Drop your questions down below and follow along for daily episodes helping you navigate the world of influencer life and social media content creation to save you time, effort, and stress while you're also turning this into your most profitable year ever. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.